misrepresentation and few examples from the day-to-day practice of cases in which people misrepresented and what were the repercussions of those. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sajjad Malik. I'm a barrister and solicitor, a Canadian business and immigration lawyer, and I'm speaking to you from Oakville, Ontario. Today I'll be talking to you about misrepresentation and few examples from the day-to-day practice of cases in which people misrepresented. And now misrepresentation means that you have misrepresented some material facts in your application which could have an impact on the decision making of that officer. Now, if you have misrepresented in an application, you may not only face refusal of your application, whichever it is, whether temporary or permanent resident application, you could also face a ban from entering Canada or applying for any kind of visa category for a period of up to 5 years. Now, a few examples of misrepresentation I'm giving in this video to just educate you a little so you could spread the word as well, and the people who are contemplating, thinking, or being trapped to misrepresent, they could mend and they could not face those consequences. Now, one example of misrepresentation is, which we have commonly seen, and it's a very common incident, that when you are submitting a visa application, there's a question in that visa application which asks you about your prior refusals or denials for a Canadian visa, or it is worded as such that it asks about whether you have been denied entry or refused visa of Canada or any other country. So sometimes out of innocence, people just read the first part of it and then they forget reading the second, or they somehow don't comprehend, and if there's no Canadian refusal, they say no to the answer, while in fact they might have been refused in the past, or they were refused in the past from the US authorities. Now, these applications are typical examples of a misrepresentation because they were denied a visa in the US, but they did not disclose in the application. Now, Canada and US, they share the information very closely, and anyone who has been denied a visa of US, that information would be available to Canadian authorities, and you are not only denied your application, but you may also most of the times face a ban for up to 5 years, and you cannot apply for any kind of temporary or permanent visa even if you fall on merit during this period of time. So this is a typical reason for the misrepresentation, which is based on a very minor, which may be an innocent error, but even at the level of the courts, these decisions of misrepresentation were upheld by the Federal Court of Canada, so you have to be very careful about it. Now, the second typical example of misrepresentation is somebody who is planning a marriage in Canada. She or he had a romantic relationship with a Canadian. They decided that all right, they'll get married. The Canadian spouse is now a Canadian fiance or partner is now waiting for the foreign national spouse to come to Canada. The foreign national spouse submitted an application for a visa in which he or she narrated that she wanted to come and for the tourism activities or to visit family or some other purpose. Now, the visa was granted. The visa is just a counterfoil on your passport which gives you the ability to board a plane to Canada. Now, that person boarded the plane and came to Canada. At the port of entry, a CBSA, Canada Border Services Agency's officer, examined that person and asked a few questions in which it was revealed that that person was coming and marrying a Canadian in another, say, 2 weeks or 4 weeks times, and all the arrangements were in place. Now, this applicant was denied entry into Canada and was returned to the home country from the next plane, and this was a misrepresentation, a typical case of misrepresentation. When that person had the intention of coming to Canada and marrying someone, that person instead misrepresented the intent of coming to Canada and showed it as tourism and some other activity, and that officer not only denied the visa to the person, returned that person to to the home country and also imposed a ban for 5 years. So this is again a classical example of it. Now another example of a misrepresentation is that you are living abroad through an agent or yourself. You got in touch with someone online who promised you that that person could secure you a job in Canada, probably against some money, which is again an illegal activity. Now relying on that, you applied for a visa as a visitor. You were coming to Canada. At the port of entry, when the officer examined that person fumbled in the interview, and then the officer detected that there's something wrong in it. The officer asked the person to show the cell phone to him. That person showed the cell phone. In that cell phone, that officer found out information or email exchange or other communication with that Canadian agent who was promising a job, and that officer not only refused entry to that person, also returned him back to his home country and also held him responsible for misrepresentation, because that person was coming with the intention of finding a job in Canada, doing a job in Canada, had some gray arrangements as well, shady arrangements as well, and he was misrepresenting his intent of coming as a tourist or as a visitor in Canada. So this is another classical example of misrepresentation. One more example of misrepresentation I would like to give you in this video, and that is exaggerating your education or exaggerating your work experience or totally modifying your work experience in your application. So this used to occur a lot in the Federal Skilled Worker Program previously, because somebody would go to an illegal and ghost consultant in an outside of Canada country, and they would tell them that, look, I am only grade 10 and I want to come to Canada under Federal Skilled Workers Program, and I have experience in this particular field, which field was not one of the required professions in Canada at that time. Now this person, the agent, ill-advised that person that, all right, let's exaggerate your education, and instead of showing his education as only grade 10, he showed his education as master's level, or for another visa, for temporary visa, he showed his education as master's level to show that he's a very well-educated person. Similarly, his employment, even if he was a junior clerk in an organization, that visa agent or ghost consultant advised him to show that he's a manager in that organization. He put that information there, and later on, when the immigration authorities detected it, that person was held having responsible for misrepresentation. Now, how can immigration authorities detect it? Sometimes through background checks. Sometimes you have said a lie on an application. If you have gone to an agent or ghost consultant who has put some information in your form without even your consent, and then at a later stage, once you are submitting another application at a later stage, then that information which was not true was submitted in a previous application, and the new information in the new application they contradicted, and they revealed that kind of anomaly as well. We have also seen that for tourist visas, sometimes these agents and ghost consultants, they ill-advise people on various aspects. For example, someone who hasn't been abroad, he has no travel history, there are reports in which some agents abroad, they have even fake stamps of some other countries which they affix on their passports to show that these people have traveled abroad. Similarly, if they don't have any assets on it, they forge certain other documents to put their name on the title and to show that these are people who own those properties as well. So these kinds of incidents, certain jurisdictions are very notorious for, certain countries are very notorious for these kinds of manipulations by the illegal ghost consultants, and that leads to a suspicion in the minds of the visa officers, because from the countries where there's a lot of such misrepresentation, sometimes even innocent people who have a genuine intent of coming to Canada, who are genuine bona fide visitors, they are refused because there are so many false applications and documentation which is coming from those countries. So for your purpose, we have to make sure that we do not become a prey to any such agents or any advices where we deliberately or consciously or unconsciously misrepresent in our application. So thank you very much for the video. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and also like the video. And for my contact information, if you have any issues around misrepresentation, please get in touch with me and we can hold a specific legal consultation with you. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.